Hello, and welcome back to the AusCannaPodcast. I'm your host, Christina McClellan, and on today's show, we're joined by the amazing Deb Ranson. Deb is a registered nurse and clinical nurse consultant whose work focuses on bridging the gap between policy and practice, particularly around the endocannabinoid system and the use of medicinal cannabis in clinical settings. Deb is passionate about ensuring both patients and practitioners have access to accurate, evidence-based information. And she's a strong advocate for improving hospital and facility policies to reflect patient needs better. Through Bodhi Nurse, Deb has created a space for practitioner support, compassionate education, and advocacy. Her motto, Reach One, Teach One, perfectly sums up her belief that when one healthcare professional learns, the entire system can grow and improve. In this episode, we'll discuss the importance of ECS education, the policy challenges facing nurses in hospitals, and how Deb is helping to shift the conversation around medicinal cannabis from the ground up. A friendly reminder, if you're enjoying the AusCannaPodcast, you can support the show directly at buymeacoffee.com/AusCannaPodcast. Also, if you've got a question you'd like me to ask in a future rapid fire segment, send it in. I'm always looking for smart, funny, or surprising questions to add to the mix. Just don't forget to include your address so I know where to send your goodie bag. All right, you know what time it is. Whether you're on a morning walk, your commute, or winding down after a long shift, take a breath, settle in, and let's dive in with some of those rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm not great at rapid fire, but I'll do my best, I promise you.
Haha, you'll do great, I promise.
Okay.
Do you make your bed every day?
No, absolutely not.
I do. There's something very rewarding climbing into a freshly made bed at the end of the day.
Oh, I do. I'll make it before I get in. We'll definitely do that. I climb into a made bed, but I do not get up one of these people and make my bed. It'll wait.
One book you recommend to everyone?
Oh, gosh, there is just too many, but I am in the middle of reading a Grinspoon book. So anything Grinspoon, whether that be Lester or Peter, I think they're really, really informative. And he's lived it. He walks the talk. But yeah, there's quite a few. But that anything Grinspoon, I think, look at.
For sure. What is your favorite Australian destination?
Oh, any creek, as I said before, we just went to one yesterday, Rocky Hole. Stony Creek, any creek that's flowing that we can have our bus. We've got a 6-meter bus, anything that we can pull up and have an open fire, which we always contain and put out. But any creek, Kenilworth, anywhere in Queensland, great destinations, Queensland.
Oh, I love it. See, now I want to go put my toes in a creek somewhere.
Oh, so icy cold.
Yeah.
Deep set in hanging rocks type of thing. So icy cold.
I can close my eyes and see myself there.
Oh, yeah.
What's a great movie you only watched once?
Oh, gosh, great movies I watch again and again. Rocky Horror is probably one of my favorites that I watch over and over. I don't know. If it's a great movie, I just watch it again and again. I like, God, I'm a bit morbid. I like, watching disaster movies. Does that sound terrible?
No.
We've just done a bit on, Avalanche and Volcano and I think great movies need to be watched again and again. Why would there be great movies if they weren't?
Requiem for a Dream would be my great movie that I only watched once. Have you ever seen it?
No, I don't think I have. I'm sorry.
Oh, it really is about the black hole that you fall into with addiction. It is, it's a fabulous movie. Like, it is so eye-opening.
Yep.
But, oh man, it'll fuck you up. And that's why I only watched it once, man.
Okay, well, remember I said volunteer stuff isn't on the survey. I might have to check that out.
Well, report back if you do.
I will.
Yeah, like I said, it is. It's a fabulous movie, but it is heavy, very, very heavy.
Oh, yeah.
First memory of hearing the word cannabis in a healthcare setting.
When I was probably 17 and an assistant in nursing, a long, long time ago, and it wasn't used as a medical term. It was in the sense of patient's family. They were using it, and it was a long time ago. I'm 60. So I guess it wasn't in the medical sense of a prescribed, but it was probably the first time I thought about it outside of people just using it.
Okay.
So it was helping with sleep, and they said nausea at the time. So I guess I was a kid, and I was also assistant in nursing, so I wasn't not a lot of medical knowledge at that time. It was a lot of hygiene cares, but it was kind of weird to see, like, you know, where we grew up in the era where people use cannabis, obviously, and it was different. But like I never seen any harm from it, so it didn't surprise me. But it was interesting to think that, well, okay, as a 17-year-old, well, there you go. That's why like these people do sleep. They're not just stoned off their nut; they're asleep because the cannabinoids have helped them get there. But then I didn't call it cannabinoids; it was weed, or yeah.
Yeah. Something you tried once and instantly knew it wasn't for you.
Coffee
Oh, you don't do coffee?
or tea or any of those things.
No?
No, I don't know why. I just don't like the smell of it, the taste of it, and especially because if we go away or I mean, obviously my wife drinks it, but when you're in a group setting and lots of people are having their morning coffees, I'm like, yuck, but I don't put on them. Yeah, so coffee.
Coffee.
That's probably a weird answer for when we're in a medical setting, but yeah, coffee.
Listener submit a question, and I hope I'm getting this person's town correct. David from Kanmantoo, South Australia, Kanmantoo. I hope that's right, David. And if it isn't, I apologize. But he wants to know, how early in life did you start using cannabis? And do you think it was too early or too late?
Probably in the sense of too early. So I was a teenager. And I mean, I grew up, my dad was a musician. My dad also had, addiction issues as well. And my mum was very much anti-alcohol. So I had a very strange kind of a family. And of course, my dad being a musician, there was cannabis around. There were other musicians and things. And so I was a teenager, and I think I often wonder to myself whether that helped me to leave school early. Was that a consideration? Like, I never really thought about it. People always used to say that it made you doughy. You were not going to function, and you certainly wouldn't think and go to school. So once I did that, like, and I was a bit of an advocate in other areas as well, not just for cannabinoids, but trees and animals and things like that. I still am. And I guess I thought, oh, geez, did that do some harm? However, I did get caught with a very tiny, small amount of cannabis, very small. And it was that little that they decided, it was at the time, I was a teenager, so it was at the time where they decided there were too many people going through the courts for cannabis. And so they were going to send them to drug counselling, it was called. I've still got the paperwork. That was 100 years ago. And I actually talk about my nursing registration in the book Cannabis Queens. because that did cause me an issue years later. But anyway, off track. I went to this drug counselling, and at that time I was studying. I held 2 jobs, and I was very functional. I wasn't what you would call an on-the-couch potato. And I also volunteered for a lot of organisations and a mental health place as well. And so I trotted off to my drug counselling, and the opening lines were basically, this is bad for you. This is what it's going to do. You're on the dole. You're going to do this. And I'm like, actually, I'm not. And this is what I do. And I think you're wrong. And I think this whole ridiculous drug war is wrong. There was a lot of words in this, but I was interviewed by 4 panel people, and that was the end of my drug counselling. That was the end. They said, there's nothing we can do here. I was dismissed. It was removed from, the whatever. I didn't have to go to it. Apparently, I was deemed functional. So why the hell wasn't everyone else? It was really hard to watch other people, and then they flipped it. Sorry, I've not answered this person's question probably, but they even decided that if someone got caught with a small amount of cannabis at that time, this is a long time ago, remember? So we've gone through different spirals in Australia, different stages, but they decided that even if you got caught with a small amount of cannabis, the person that actually owned the dwelling where you were would be in trouble too. So that caused conflicts in family and all sorts of things. This was up in Queensland. So to answer that person's question, I was probably 14, I'd say, and probably too young, yes, just because I was still at school and had things to learn. That's just my personal opinion. I actually work in an area where we have a pediatric specialist that does cannabinoids for children. So roll that clock forward, and I think medically there's an area for it.
I agree with you completely. Like, I started around the same age.
Yeah.
And probably could have waited.
Yeah.
Both probably could have waited for sure. A woulda, coulda, shoulda is one of those things, right? But I'm with you. Now, knowing what I know now, there definitely is a place for pediatric cannabinoid therapy for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Teenagers sitting around smoking cones? No, I don't think so. Call me, I don't know what you'd want to call that. I really am an advocate for cannabinoid medicine, but I do a lot of harm reduction. We see kids that come across, under specialists that have ADHD. Let's face it, they're drawn to it, aren't they? That's not a medical opinion. I just see the aftermath of the years of Ritalin and the Vyvanse and everything else in some. And then they find a bit of cannabis, and their parents, have gone through the hoops and finally ended up somewhere, and they're just a different kid when they use it. So we have to harm reduce that. They got little lungs, they're young. I don't want to see them dragging around an oxygen concentrator, bloody hell, at 50, you know what I mean? So, yeah, there's a place for it. It just needs to be really assessed, monitored, reassessed. There needs to be a criteria for it. And that's, I think, one of the things, if anyone's put in the TGA consultation, a little bit on pediatrics education for practitioners out there. So they're not just so scared. We don't want to see them 14-year-olds be living a life of vice and crime at 50 because they've spiraled out of control. They've gone off selling all these medications they've been given, and they use green market cannabis, then they're caught and they're in trouble. It just seems like we're fishing them out, like they say, at the end of the river instead of finding out why they're falling in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Last question. Best sandwich?
Chips. Hot chips and butter. Hot chips and butter, and sometimes hot chips and tomato sauce, and sometimes hot chips and barbecue sauce. I'm a very plain person. I love hot chips. Hot chip sandwich. I didn't say Vegemite. I guess I should have because that's Australian. But a hot chip hanger anytime. And I'm not one of these people that grew up putting potato crisps or potato chippies on bread and butter. Don't like it, but love a hot chip. And hot chip and melted chocolate. Have you ever tried it? And no, I'm not pregnant. Get a hot chip or a plain chip, bite of any kind of chocolate, and you'll go, that's mind blowing.
I gotta try it now. Because I would have been like, I don't know, an ice cream sandwich, but now I want a hot chip sandwich.
I'll tell you something else if you're really broke, and people are really going to think I'm strange now, but the little lollies, gel lollies called Chicos, like Chico babies. I think they call them something else now, but they're little Chico babies.
Yeah, I think so.
If you have a bite of one of them, and it's got to be barbecue chips, Samboy chips. If you have a bite of a Chico and a bite of a barbecue chip and shut your eyes and chew, you'll go, oh my God, I'm in a Chinese restaurant. I'm serious. Now, that is no trippy thing. I am serious. Go and buy has to be a real bag of Chicos, though, not imitation ones, and have a bit of barbecue chip and chew them both at once, and you'll think, wow, that's a Chinese restaurant. You'll feel it'll be like, and yeah, okay. So now all your listeners think I'm insane, but it's actually true. Try it.
No, because that's exactly what we've all hit pause. We're all running out to go get the munchie to come back to listen to the rest of the episode. That's hilarious because now I'm now
and give me your feedback. Let me know what you think on both of those.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I'll send you a picture later where I'm the Deb snack.
Love it. That's funny.
All right, miss. That was wonderful. I loved it. Those are some great answers. For sure.
Totally off track, but anyway.
That's okay. That's what the rapid fire questions are all about. They're supposed to get you slightly off track, right?
Yeah.
So, Dad, for the listeners who don't know anything about you, do you mind giving us a brief introduction?
Yeah. So my name's Deb Ranson. I work in the cannabinoid space in clinic, and I also work in a main public hospital. Have been a cardiac nurse for over 20 years and done other health areas, mental health, palliative care, a few other areas, alcohol and drug counsellor. Currently, I focus mainly on cannabinoid education, medicine, and I guess helping my fellow nurses and colleagues understand not just cannabis as a medicine, but the ECS. I'm all about the ECS. So I do teach in a lot of local hospitals in Queensland and travel a bit too. I created Nurses Green Health and Education about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Basically, I just started doing everything. I do everything for free. I teach at all the hospitals for free. I just to help them understand about their ECS. And then it naturally flows into a bit of information about cannabinoids and how the endogenous cannabinoids and exogenous cannabinoids can live together. So I'm also a volunteer for UIC, United in Compassion. Love Lucy Haslam. Deeply involved in advocacy. I'm a Drive Change ambassador as well. Just can like to contribute to what I can to make that space easier for patients because they've had a hell of a run. And without them, we wouldn't have what we have now. All of these companies making the millions of dollars and, everything. We wouldn't have a TGA portal. We wouldn't have a SASB option because they're the pioneers. I used to, I've been to Nimbin on several occasions. I love Michael and what they've done. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I think patients are the pioneers and the backbone of this, and without them, I wouldn't even be here.
Can you share how you first kind of became involved in the cannabis space as a nurse?
Yeah. Well, look, I guess the advocacy goes back forever. Mum used to say alcohol was a bit of a demon, and I'd rather you kind of have some cannabis rather than some alcohol. So it was always around for me, but nursing wise, as I said before, when I was 17, that's where it started. And gradually, because I did a bit of palliative care, mental health, I just would see it a lot. And I guess I don't know what it is, but people talk to me. People would, I'd go in and take their history and, check all their medications and talk to them about, and they would just, something they would tell me is, they weren't using the antiemetic or they weren't using this because they were smoking cones or they were doing this or they're doing that. So yeah, early in the piece, and then worked a lot with thoracics and cystic fibrosis. They used to make all their own brownies, and it was just part of the unspoken thing in some hospital medicine areas, and a lot of stigma around it as well. So, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
How did you first become involved?
Yeah, So, seeing that, I guess that patients who were starting to willing to speak up. I'd see a couple who'd actually talk about it. And then I can remember many, many, many moons ago, Michael asked me to come down to Nimbin to one of the med cans or something they had. And I just would ask them, I guess, to speak up. And I mentioned, I can remember standing on stage saying, even your physios, whether they're helping you with your pain management, they're helping them with the movement. Tell your doctors, if you're not taking this medication, tell them. So it started that way. And then I started looking for research and I joined, there was nothing in Australia. It was, pre the 2000s, there were so many submissions and reports in Australia that actually had so many reviews and suggestions how we could do this. There was actually one that said the criminal nature of cannabis should be removed. And I wondered why people weren't actually listening to that. So I started to print out a few things and leave them on tea tables. And I always cop the long-haired nurse that always talks about cannabis, and there was a lot of stigma there. And I guess I've always remained professional. I have got myself involved in policy committees and workplace health and safety things, and I guess would ask the question why aren't we truly fighting for something that patients talk about all the time? And I could never really get anything over the line till 2016 though. But in the lead up to that, 2010 to 2016, there were a lot of people fighting in the background. So I can remember 2010 and 11, we were having secret meetings in golf clubs, and certain politicians or MPs would come along and they'd say in the background, oh yes, my brother's using it or this is using it. And I'd say, why aren't you speaking up? We're trying to get this involved in the health system, and they just were worried about their jobs. There were a lot of politicians that made a lot of promises to Lucy too, but when it come down to it, nothing happened. So just that, I'd print out research, breast cancer and pain studies and sleep studies, and I'd leave them on our tea tables at work. And mutual area doctors would come, pathologists and nurses, and I'd find them in the bin on some occasions in the early lead up, and I would just print them out again, and then I'd put things up on the board. But what I actually did in 2016, there was a lot in the lead up to that, years and years of bashing your head up against the wall. And I'm a small cog in a huge wheel. There were many people doing this. You just didn't hear about them. They weren't on the news, And then I thought, we got it legalized in 2016, and I thought, well, bugger it, let's do something at the hospital. We have a legal medicine now. There's a pathway. There's an actual pathway. They've felt that it's real. So I went to our CEO, and I still got the email. She actually wrote back and said, oh, you can't bring your friends from Nimbin to speak here. And I said, I'm sorry, albeit they've all got their own credentials, but what they wanted to hear was science, what they wanted to hear. So anyway, I said, look, I'm going to send you the bios of a whole pile of people that I would like to speak. And I did. I sent them off. I had speakers, from Canada and all around Australia, Justin Sinclair, people like that, who freely gave my time. And to this day, I'm ever grateful to them. But anyway, I sent off their bios, and work's like, whoa, okay, all right. So I had a head respiratory consultant. He's still at my hospital now. And he'd said to me, Deb, this is amazing. And I'm like, it is. This is what I'm saying. It truly is. And he goes, well, this isn't worthy of an hour. This is worthy of a whole day. because they were going to give me the grand rounds. And grand rounds is an hour where you get to come up and speak in front of all the doctors. He said, no, this is worthy of a whole day. So I put it to them, and they actually supplied the food, and I put on a whole day. I had to actually ask them to extend the room. I had 300 doctors, consultants, psychiatrists, standing room only, ticked them off, full day. The feedback I got from that, Christina, was amazing. And that was the rollout of hospital. I thought, well, why can't I do this everywhere? So I just started emailing off hospitals, and obviously I'd been at my hospital a long time. So I had worked on the transplant team for 7 years, and I knew a lot of people. So they knew that I wasn't kind of just there to say, everybody, let's get high. So that's a very long answer, but it started 100 years ago. I'm 60 years old. I guess when we turned the clock in 2016, that's when we started to go hard, because then I had an avenue, I guess, through the medical regime to get it out. And, I do GP land now. They're very, very open to it. I go out and speak to them for an hour. There might be 11 doctors, 3 admin, and the practice nurse in there. But reach one, teach one.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I love that. Reach one, teach one. Expand on that, because I think first of all, it's super catchy. But then as soon as you say it and you let it sit with you for a second, you're like, it's so true, though, because if you can reach them, you're teaching them. And if you can just talk to them, and then you can break down some barriers and some walls, and then we can roll back the stigma. And then all of a sudden you're like, yes, this is important. And you did teach them. So expand on, because where did that come from? It's like I said, it's so catchy.
I don't know. I've been saying it forever, and it's kind of like I'd put it at the end of my, when I write something or whatever. It just, I don't know. I felt like we're reaching them, and once you do get them and get their attention, you're actually teaching them. That's what I find in the hospital. Like, I'll have a fair bit of stigma in that room. Like, I've shared some things on LinkedIn where I've got an entire room of 50 nurses from perioperative, say, and there'll be several in there that come with their own ideas, and they might even say something like, listen, I'm all for medicinal cannabis, but not the buds, not that bud type. And then when I explain to them and I show them, the terpenes, and I break it down and say, well, actually all that medicine is coming from the flowering tops of the cannabis plant. Well, we go through that, and you can see in their eyes, you're reaching them, like our UIC symposiums where we do the nurse day. We created that day for nurses. It was about reaching those nurses. So I would get up on stage, and I would have a bunch of mainstream nurses that know absolutely nothing about cannabinoids, let alone their ECS. And I say to them, this is a legal medicine. You sign your ARPA registration every year to say you're up to date. You tick those boxes, right? Now, this is a legal medicine. It is accessible by patients. They're bringing it into your hospital nearly every day. That's why we created our policy for cannabinoids at the hospital, because nearly every day we'll see someone in an area, well, every day in one area or another, especially ED. So when you sign that form to say you're up to date, you're not really, if you're creating some form of stigma for a patient who's come to your ward. They've been on cannabinoids for 2 years. Remember, nearly 10 years legal now. And their faces go, what? 10 years? I didn't know they could actually bring it to hospital. Well, yeah, you've even got a policy. Do you want me to share it with you? Because this is where it stands. If it's buds and they bring it in, the pharmacy need to weigh it. It needs to be locked in the DD cupboard. It says in our policy, it can only be used via a TGA-approved vaporizer, i.e. Mighty Medic, they've got in brackets, And that's been upgraded too, to take it away from just talking about cannabis. It's now just a monitored med. And now what device you use takes you to the TGA website. Like, it's not all dictated out now, because our practitioners should know this. Our doctors should know that they can prescribe it. So I guess, they'll come up to me at the end and they'll go, and I get goosebumps when I talk about it, because they'll go, you've just blown my mind. You've just blown my mind. Or like, I did not know I was creating endogenous cannabinoids. Like, that just, it spins them out, it freaks them out. Then they get angry that they didn't know. And then that anger can turn into passion and advocacy. And that's what I say to them. Get angry. You should be angry, but let's not get angry where we're putting people offside. Let's work with them. Like the TGA submission. And holy God, I've got like so many hours now to get mine in. I'm still, because I got my finger in so many pies. But this is why I created Nurses Green Health and Education. I just built a website, put it up there and said, if you want to learn about your ECS, reach out to me, and every few weeks I get a message from the hospital, to come to somewhere. I've just done outpatients at a local Brisbane hospital, outpatients, you know. So yeah, I guess that's the answer to that. Reach one, teach one. I do the best to put my hand up for everything. Festival of Nursing. It's a primary healthcare network of nurses. Hundreds, like we've got 60,000 nurses just in QNMU. And I just seen an ad one day for, if there's any nurses out there listening, I just seen an ad one day, might have even been on LinkedIn or Facebook or an email, not sure. Primary Network Symposium is on again, 2025. Great speakers, yada, yada, yada. So I had to look in and actually hadn't done their abstracts, hadn't accepted their abstracts yet. And I thought, well, bloody hell, this is primary healthcare. Let's get the ECS out and into primary healthcare, because I'm always in public health network with hospitals and GP land. This is primary healthcare, PHN. So I put in a submission and simply said, I would like to speak about the endocannabinoid system. This is what I do. This is what I have done. Here's my submission on what I'll talk about. And they accepted me for, it was supposed to be an hour. It was an hour and a half. And the stage was like, I'm not being a smart aleck or boasting, like the stage, they come forward when I finish and they're like, thank you so much. Have you got something? I print out all the terpenes. I print out a cannabinoid wheel for them. It's not just about THC and CBD. The first thing they talk about is THC and being stoned. Hey, that's not what it's about. Did you know there's CBN, CBC, CBG? There's not just this THCA, CBDA. When you've got that hour and a half or 2 hours with a bunch of nurses, I can go right back to, this is who I am. This is what medicinal cannabis is, but this is what your ECS is. And I start with the ECS. I'm sorry, I'm probably not answering any of your questions here.
You
I'm
are.
sorry.
Oh, Deb, I love it. But you know what I am going to make you do, and I'm going to hold you to this one. Because I understand the ECS, you understand the ECS. I would like to believe that a lot of people who are listening understand the ECS.
Yeah.
But how do you explain the endocannabinoid system to a patient or to a practitioner or just anyone who's hearing about it for the first time?
Oh, God, I haven't got out. How would we be forever? So how do you explain the ECS? So the first things I would say, it is one of the biggest human body systems. We don't know about it. Why don't we know about it? Stigma. So I do start with that. I do talk about what's behind the reason you don't know. Okay, so this was used as a medicine many, many years ago. And I will also show some old pharmacy charting documents and stuff and show where we've used it, cannabis indicating, show the old Merck's manual and pharmacopoeia and stuff like that. And I'll say it's always there. But the stigma around that has stopped us learning about this body system that creates homeostasis. Okay, it keeps your equilibrium of your body going. Now, what is the ECS? We'll go into the three core components where you've got your receptors and your enzymes and your compounds. And then when you talk about enzymes, so you can't just have 5 minutes with a nurse on the ECS because they've learnt their bioscience in class about, FAR and MAGL and, the enzymes that are going to break down an andamine and AG and things like that, but they've forgotten everything. And nurse that's out there 20 years later, which is a lot of I'm reaching. I've got some newbies in there, but they've forgotten their science. So you've got to go back into, the cell membrane and the receptors and how it binds and, the whole pathway. You talk about the ECS, you've got to talk about your hypothalamus, and you've got to talk about the amygdala. You've got to talk about the fear factor, where you've got your own endogenous, not just cannabinoids, but, 5-HT receptors and other receptors that are actually binding other things in your body. If you've got gamma and glutamate firing off crazy in your ECS, like traffic lights on amber, what's going to happen in that brain? It's like a lion's roar. What are you going to do? Is there a lion going to eat me, or is it behind a cage? Or am I out in Africa on a safari and there's a bloody big chance I'm going to get my head ripped off? Those, compounds and receptors kick into action. So what is an ECS? You've got prolific receptors throughout your body. They work in mainstream in your body. So, if they don't know about this particular system, how do you teach them about any cannabinoids or any exogenous that's going to work in that endogenous process? They don't know that anandamide, is actually something that's going to help reduce heavy anxiety, panic, 2AG, breast milk, suckling response, tongue reflex. So you can't say broad stream, well, if your baby's not breastfed, that's not getting these cannabinoids, because of course it is. Your body's still making them. That baby's still going to get it whether they're breastfed or not. But that suckling response and tongue reflex is actually activated by this mechanism, So bottle fed or baby fed, you still will get that mechanism happening. So, yeah, how do you teach them about the ECS? You've got to go right back to the basics and the science behind what is the breakdown of the ECS to teach about the ECS. Does that make sense?
It does. When you stop to think about it, I can't remember the exact year, but it was the 90s that we quote unquote discovered the ECS.
Elucidated, yeah.
Yeah. So doctors who went through med school in the 60s, 70s, 80s, early 90s would have never even heard about this system.
And that's why I talk about Grinspoon and them. Raphael Michelem, Ethan Russo, even, when they did discover those receptors, and what are they now discovering now? Like Dee Dee Mary, there's so many other people talk about CB1 and CB2, but you've got your PPR receptors, you've got other minor. When you say minor receptors, they're doing big work. They're helping to break down other compounds in your body, which are all helping in the functioning of an ECS. When that's depleted, how, Raphael Michelem and they've proven that autoimmune. And if people want research or whatever, I'm happy to, you only need to do a proper scholar search, but, they've proven that a broken ECS or malfunctioning or deficient can create a broad myriad of autoimmune conditions. So we see these people, IBS and anxiety-driven diarrhea. Let's talk about, and colitis, endometriosis, fibromyalgias and things like that. How, if they went and actually, they want their evidence, they went out to every proper functioning clinic and grabbed just endometriosis patients and did research on them, say, using a balance or a blended oil, CBD and THC, and look at the breakdown, the less angriness, the less polyps, say, in IBS, or, they go into their, gynaes, and the inflammation, they're like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. That's all part of that correcting that ECS and that autoimmune imbalance. Well, what's an autoimmune imbalance? Endocannabinoid deficiency. I don't know. I think the research stands to show that if your ECS is not functioning correctly, there's going to be a broad range of issues for your body, and whether that be physical or mentally. Look how many panic-driven patients who cannot get on a train, cannot function, can't go to medical appointments, let alone have a job, start a little bit of CBD in the morning and holy hell, lights come on. Shit, I function. I've seen children that for years they've had to dress their siblings, and the whole world falls apart if they don't pick those clothes. They don't get out the door, and the other three siblings don't either get to school either because they can't get out the door. Start a little bit of and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's for everyone. I'm just saying this is a case I know where started a little bit, got a bit of a routine going. It was only 0.25 to begin with of pure CBD. Roll the clock forward to a couple of months, and he couldn't give a rat's what his siblings are wearing. He's happy go Larry, brushing his teeth, getting his lunch ready, getting off to school and having a good day at school, albeit it wasn't as easy as that. Had to introduce a day dose and there were issues with school and blah, 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 blah. But what I'm saying is we corrected some kind of imbalance there that didn't take the myriad of pharmaceuticals he'd been on. But the sad part is he had to go through that to get to there. So it's something in there needs to change. So teaching people about their ECS, what's going wrong, learning about how we can bring that back to homeostasis if it is malfunctioning. And like in some people, I guess it can't be corrected. There has been patients out there that, I've tried my damnedest and I don't give up, but that we just can't get it right, so it's not for everyone, and they will walk away, I guess, with the feeling in some cases, it just didn't help me. Thank you for trying. It just didn't help me. Yeah. And sometimes it's the driving law that does that too, because they'll try a broad range of CBDs, whether that be with other cannabinoids in there, broad spectrums, isolates, and they just can't. They're law abiding. They just can't do it. They just can't risk not being able to take the kids to school or get to the nursing home to see mum. And it's sad, but they'll walk away kind of with that. It didn't work for me. But you didn't quite get there. Do you not understand that?
Yeah. I mean, one, I firmly believe that CBD should be as easy to get as Panadol. I firmly believe that.
Look at us now. Well, sorry to cut you off, but where were we? 2022? You go on any platform, TGA included, and it says CBD 2022 available over the counter in pharmacies. It's bloody not.
I know it's not. And it's
bloody not. And the thing that annoys me, sorry, this isn't even a question, but it does annoy me, and companies will probably hate me for saying this, and don't get me wrong, we've got some great companies out there that are really patient-centered, and little guys as well that are getting booted out because there's big guys with more money to advertise and stuff, I guess. But my point to this is the TGA want evidence, all right? We're not getting around that. They want research. I don't necessarily agree with the whole hog, but like we've got money to spend millions on advertising, and let's look at the profit margin. Some of them are making a lot of money. So why can't you dedicate, and some are now, like even OMG, and who I work for, just done some trials, but put some money into those trials. You know how they're asking for it? So it can be get off SASB. Let's, get this PBS listed thing. Why were we keeping that a pipe dream? It shouldn't be a pipe dream. It should be something where they're actioning now. Pull all your monies together and bloody get this research out so it is accepted and we stop this last line rubbish, because it is needed as a first line. Still need your pediatric referrals and all of that jazz. I'm not saying any of that, but it definitely needs to be not skipped over. That patient I told you about before we got on here, like, why have you got someone who is just having a bit of anxiety. They're just not sleeping well. Life's been a bit cracked. There's been a few hiccups. Why should we then go and stick them on every Doppelcone and every medicine under the sun when a couple of drops of THC would probably help them potentially get a good solid 8-hour sleep, and then they're back routinely sleeping well. They've probably negated whatever the situation that was that started that. So we've actually prevented them from having to start a medication that could potentially have a whole broad range of other adverse for them. When the fact is the THC, the adverse for them is going to be that bloody driving law, because we will have done our due diligence and ticked that there's no psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar. And if there was, that doesn't prevent them from seeking help either, because you should be prepared to work with their psychiatrist, work with their pain specialist if they've got a multi-range of opioids on. We do a We Care program. Like, the first thing we want to do is harm reduction. And if that means starting a THC CBD titration, up scheduling as their pain specialist down titrates their opioids and we keep going up, that's not trading one addiction for another. That's trading an addictive medicine for an alternative plant-based therapy that can bloody well help them and prevent all of that other fallout, i.e. family relationship breakdown. You're just zonked in a corner. You got no functionality. Your libido's dropped. You've lost your job. Your kids hate you because you're cranky bastard till you take your pills every day. And now dad's having a bit of maybe he does need a dry herb as a potential breakthrough, but dad's having a bit of oil at night to sleep, bit of CBD, maybe even a blend. A bit of a blend through the day. Doesn't need to be pure CBD if that's what's clinically warranted. Now we've got a man who's functional. Hey, I'm feeling a bit better. And work, my old work buddies have noticed how clear-headed I am again. My kids are saying, Dad, you're not falling asleep at the wheel. And that's a real statement, but in a female child that said it about her mum. Dad, you're not falling asleep at the wheel anymore. Dad's kicking the ball with us. Dad's taking us out. Workmates, hey, why don't you ask John for a day's work back again? Shit, John, you look so well. Sure, day's work. Roll it forward 6 months, 2 days work. Kids are happy, wife's happy. Even if they were exes, they're talking. It's not for everyone, but this is the scenario I see. And then all of a sudden, we're going to put you on 3 days a week. John, let's do a medical. Ticks a box. I take cannabis as a medicine. John's back out on the street. John's now not got a job. So John decides, I need that job. Let's stop the medicine. Agrees to start back at work, no medicine. Now he's cranky. He's drugged again. He's zombie-like. He's not at soccer with the kids on the weekend anymore because he's in pain, because his pain meds aren't working. And we're back where we were. Take that to a nurse scenario where someone's come into work and they come in for a knee washout. They've been taking cannabinoids for 2 years and they use high THC. They do use herb and CBD. And the ignorant or uneducated, I should say, or just doesn't know, nurse takes it off them and sends it home. Or worse, tips it down the sink. Doesn't report it to the RMO, doesn't tell the reg, doesn't hand it over to a team leader, and this patient spends days and days in pain because he's too scared to tell the next nurse because that nurse treated him like a prick. And so then someone else comes on and says, what the hell? This is a legal medicine. Here's the bottle. The label is very much legible. What is your problem? But not in that attitude. Hey, what's going on here? This is legally prescribed. What's happening? Oh no, it's cannabis. Yeah, legally prescribed. We need to get this written up. This man's in pain. He spent 2 years removing endone, and you've just written him up for endone that you've been giving him for 4 days. His wife's losing his mind. He had the hellest of addictions. We spent 2 years treating him. What is going on here? This is negligence. Okay. And then when you start to advocate that patient and you start to say, you're an APRA registered practitioner. Do you know the hospital's got a policy? And then it's like, shit, I've done the wrong thing. You don't want to make them think that. I want them to just see shit, God, I probably didn't answer that question either. Sorry.
Oh, no, Deb, I love it. I was going to say policy is often, it's slow to catch up with practice. What do you think are the biggest challenges you see in a hospital or facility policies that around medicinal cannabis?
None. My biggest challenge is no policy. So,
Ah.
it depends. I have lots of nurses reach out and say, how do I did a podcast for Cannabis Nurses Network not so long ago, American girls, and one of the nurses come on and she was really concerned about cannabis being brought in to her hospital and no policy. And what happened was she actually got some cannabis. She had a really bad ache and she'd got some. And she also was a patient at that hospital as well as worked there. And she was worried about it being seen or noted or whatever, but she was more concerned about the patients. And she said, I just don't know how to bring it up. I don't know what to say. And I said, well, go to that doctor. She was worried about this doctor being really stigmatized and whatever. And I said, well, make them think it's their idea. And she said, what do you mean? I said, go to them and say, hey, there's been several patients bringing this in, blah, 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 blah. I've noticed that we don't have actually any information on this. We should be a forerunner in this because this is out there now. Do you think we should have a policy? Like, make them think it's their idea. Oh, yes, we should get a policy going. That's right. Like, so not only patients are protected, but staff know what they're doing. So, and in Australia, I'll get it often asked, well, how did you get a policy? We made one. Okay. So if you're in any area, whether that's private health network, in a community, hospice, you need to have a policy. You're going to see medicinal cannabis there. Okay. And you're also going to see green market, what they want to call black market or recreational. So I guess you need to have, open eyes about that and try and encourage them because there's too many pathways. The pathway's there for you to not use illicit. So let's just try and get a bit of, education there. But make a policy. Go to you think you can't, but that's what nurses are about. And especially 2025 was your year. If you think you can't, ICN, like the international nurses, they have said that nurses now need to advocate. They need to be policy writers. They need to be at the forefront of the latest research and they need to be pushing it. And if you look at that Council of Nurses policy that did come out, the first 4 lines, they say it, policy writing and advocacy. So I run with that and they're your, that's us. And that's what you need to do. And if you look at ANMF, so the Australian Nurses and Midwife Federation, they didn't have a policy. Okay. We got on board with them years ago after it was 216 and legalised in Australia. So it's Australia-wide. Now, we as nurses were state registered once. And everything had to be interchanged. You had to go and approve it everywhere else. We're not anymore. We're Australia-wide. And so ANMF, one of the biggest bodies, we all have branches in every state of ANMF. Ours has 70,000 nurses in our branch in Queensland, okay? So first of all, we went to them about a policy. We have to make one. So that started a working group. So then my branch under them in Queensland is Queensland Nurses and Midwives Union. So I went to my branch and we have a big conference once a year. And I started putting forward motions, medicinal cannabis education. Where are the nurses? Why aren't they behind this? Where is the nurse for education? So I'd put those motions and then I'd go into conference and I'd stand up and speak to it and get votes. So each year it was voted and there were things that come back. We started there's already a policy committee, but there was no policy around medicinal cannabis. So we started to write one of them. I was going hard for education. It still wasn't getting over. And then finally, I think 2017, I got a whole room, like 1,000 nurses, unanimous vote. Let's get this across. So that's when that full policy was released for them. ANMF released their policy. So I guess you've just got to advocate it for yourself. These are nurses that did this. These aren't working bees in Queensland Health or working bees in New South Wales Health or politicians. Were nurses on the floor that created these policies. So anyone out there that wants any help, I'm happy to, share what we did in ours. If anyone would like any help on that, just make it.
Love it. Are there any examples that you can think of like hospitals or facilities that are getting it right?
We're getting it right. However, I'm biased, but we are getting it right, but we're also getting it wrong. Now, this is where it kind of clashes with smoking. Despite what TGA did and took away all the available vaporizers, whatever, made only one legal. So in our hospital, if you come in with herb, it has to be weighed up and put in the dangerous drug cupboard with all the other opioids and morphines and S8 medications and whatever. And in the beginning, the thoracic and palliative, like there was some they were able to use it. They were using it in a single room. They were using the vaporizer. Then there were some issues. Some people were saying they were getting high on it secondhand. There were just issues, I guess, stigma, uneducated, and I guess the air conditioning and the smell going through the place, whatever. So then it was said that they have to go out to where the smokers go. Now, being a nurse forever, part of the era where we pushed a patient out in a wheelchair for a cigarette with their 10 iMed medication machines flowing, and they'd sit out there and have 5 cigarettes. And so my argument is, especially in mental health, now the first thing you do in mental health is take their cannabinoid medicines off them. That's another bugbear. I'm leading off on different trails where I am fighting for, but these guys use cannabis legally out there, and they're actually in there for a tune-up. So why are we taking something off them that helps them maintain that tune-up? So there's some areas we need to fix it, because my 78-year-old man who has COPD uses flower as a breakthrough bronchodilator because it opens his bronchial trees, but predominantly uses CBD and THC oil. The herb does the short-term work, the oil does the hard-term work. Why am I having to push him out in 4-degree temperatures outside the gate where a cigarette smoker, nicotine, harmful, proven that, kills you, causes cancer, is? Why isn't there, and please don't take this wrong, there's a pergola area and a naming area and a fire burning area where we have Indigenous ceremonies and smoking ceremonies and things like that. Could it not be in the same area? Can we not get together and collaborate as a group? Like, not when they're doing their ceremonies and things, but build an area like that, And these, I know the smoking ceremonies are important, but my patient's health is important too. So we need to put as much effort into other things as we do other things, is what I'm saying. So our policy is not perfect. Sunshine Coast have an okay policy, but again, they're under that health banner of in Queensland. I can name a couple of hospitals that have done it very poorly that we've had to call. I don't want to do that. There's a lot in New South Wales, I will say that. A lot of stigma going on. And then further down, there's a lot of really good stuff going on. They work, because I also, when we do our education, like Bodhi Nurses that we've started, I talk to the nurses about asking their patients. So many patients are using it now. If they're coming into surgery, it needs to be part of that questionnaire now. Are you pregnant? Have you done this? Are you doing that? Do you use cannabis as a medicine? It should be part of that protocol now. And I guess, ask the questions, and which will form, it'll help you to get policies done. Like down south, one hospital, I tell them about, anaesthetists are right onto it now. We've got a lot of education around that. They want to know, because it impacts on what they give and how much they give and how much post-care you need and how much higher medication needs you may have post-surgery. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, you've just got to ask questions and keep advocating for some kind of policy in that hospital. I mean, there's some pretty shitty things that go on out there. I'll give you one little example of what's called a drug vault. So a drug vault's run by the police, and it's in the hospital emergency department. Now, great for illicit meth and whatever, and but if you get an ignorant practitioner, someone's brought it in because that's part of their regular medications. Okay. They brought in their Valium, or they brought in their, their Clarentine, or their antihistamine, or their whatever. And that goes in the other cupboard. But there's medicinal cannabis in this one, and it goes in a drug vault. Do you see the stigma there or the change? Now, this is the worst part. All the other medications are given back. Someone doesn't check the register for the drug vault, and we don't also have a key. The police do. So to get that medicinal cannabis back out of that vault, it's a phone call off to a police station, and the exact same police officer that locked it, that audited it, to come and open it. What the hell? So that's phone calls and days, okay? Someone's come in because maybe they've had trauma, they've needed their arm sutured, and they've brought this in thinking they might be there overnight, and that's what they use to sleep. They've sutured their arm and gone home, but it's in a drug vault, That's when there's police interaction involved in whatever scenario. So that's terrible. That's a terrible situation, isn't it? I mean, yeah. Policies. It needs to be clear what we do with things.
It's always gonna be an uphill battle, I feel at times though, right? Like, it's one of those things that double standards and stigma, and I'm with you, like, why wouldn't it just be with all the other medications? Like, why do we have to lock it up with the meth and have to get a police officer to come? Like, it seems like overkill to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's part of the policy and procedure on medications. If it gets mixed up, if the practitioner deems it's not legal, when it is, it ends up in that illicit vault and creates, a drama. Let's talk about schools and, a kiddie that may have great benefit morning and afternoon dose. They've gone from drooling mess and throwing chairs to having full days at school. And then we may have a little bit of an issue where that behaviour is starting to kick in a bit earlier before that afternoon dose. And so the practitioner, me, and the doctor decide, well, look, it's probably best to have a lunchtime dose. I can't do that. The school has a breakdown. Oh, my God, you can't have cannabis in the office. And so it takes someone, and this is the exact scenario, to call. And I'm like, okay, so no worries. I understand that. You're just admin. That's her words, not mine, just admin. Well, tell me, the other kiddies with ADHD and whatever, and that with the who gives the Ritalin? Oh, I do. She didn't think about it. She actually didn't think about it. Oh, I do. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, okay. So that's the same category medication, when you actually speak to them about it and they actually hear what they're saying and you repeat that back to them. Okay, so you're okay, you're comfortable to handle that pill and hand that to the child. Well, actually, this is a similar medication, albeit we're using the word cannabis or cannabinoid, but you're letting that override sense and common sense because you're giving out Ritalin. So how about we work it that you don't have to touch it? I'll get mum to butter bread. We'll do a little bread square with the lunch dose on it. Pop a lid on it. It's in cling wrap. It's in the lunchbox. It's in the drug fridge in the office, still locked with the Ritalin and everything else and the Panadols and whatever. And then when little Tommy Blow comes up and he stands in front of you, you open the lunchbox, he takes his bread square, he eats it in front of you, and he's gone. And that's exactly what happened. And that daytime behavior, that little breakthrough about 2:30, 2 o'clock, stopped, because it would start to be a bit more, a bit of a kick-off in the car on the way home. So they could see the dose just needed to be, it wasn't a matter of increasing the morning dose. It was a matter of adding in a midday dose. So, common sense when it comes to things like that. And that's where a nurse has to advocate. If no one did that, what would have happened?
The world would be a shitty place if we didn't have nurses.
They're the backbone,
They are.
and they're often left behind, They're the ones at the bedside. They're the ones hearing the information. And that's what I say about handing it over. Hand it over. Don't just go home, I guess, and talk to your mates or talk in the tea room and say, hey, did you hear that this is happening or that's happening? Speak to those practitioners that are going to make a difference. That's what I say about reaching those consultants. After that full-day symposium at my hospital, I had psychiatrists, head consultant psychiatrists. I can show you the feedback. It's not in my mind, emailing me within days saying, this was absolutely outstanding. Will you come and speak to my registrars? These, a lot of people say doctors don't listen to nurses, and in some cases they don't. We are fobbed off. But nurses are the backbone of that whole, doctors write the scripts. Yes, they're in there. Yes, they put in the hours and they work hard. But we are there with the patient, front facing and hearing that trauma and that, everything.
Yep. Nurses are angels, man. Like I said, they're overworked and underpaid and underappreciated. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, God, that's why I guess, like you said before earlier, that ECS was discovered in 1990s, and there's a lot of broken nurses out there who have a malfunctioning ECS. I don't just need them to know that cannabis is a medicine, I guess, for their patients, but I do need them to know that they've got an ECS and it can be screwed up big time. And that's why we started Bodhi, so patients can get better care from nurses who are more informed and actually looking after their own bodies, I guess. Farmers guided by, priorities and approval processes and all sorts of things. But plant medicine education is guided by that first, the nurses who were always there, Florence Nightingale. And you wouldn't give insulin, would you? You wouldn't go out and give insulin as a nurse, without understanding the endocrine system. So why in the hell are they expected to comment or, do something with cannabinoids when they don't even know they've got a friggin' ECS? Sorry, didn't mean to swear.
It's true, though. It's true.
We're policy shapers. We're not just caregivers. So girls or boys or anyone out there, please advocate for yourself and your patient.
Deb, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. It really has.
I'm sorry, I probably raved on a lot and said a lot of words or questions you didn't even answer.
Nah, don't worry about it. I learned something. I learned something in all these episodes, right?
Yeah.
I do. It's why I do them, though, right? Essentially, this was my whole idea with the podcast, was just to extend the platform and get more education out there, right? And so, yeah, this has been great. I've learned something along the way, Deb, for sure.
No, I think you're amazing in what you do. You're part of that large wheel I spoke about before. Like, there's no one person out there doing it all. We're all part of helping to shape and form the future. So I hope everyone that felt they could, did a submission to the TGA. I will get mine in, but people have said to me, what could I contribute? And they just in conversations, they'll tell me 30 things they can contribute. So everyone just keep fighting and reach one, teach one.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just about to say, what is your call of action as I let you go? But it's got to be reach one, teach one, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, walk the talk. Don't just get out there on social media and talk about it. Actually do it. My wife would tell you, we live and breathe that education here. Like, I'm going to do the Pride Festival soon at the Sunshine Coast, and that's a full day where she comes along and helps me hand out ECS brochures, and people are like, "What's an ECS?" And I'm like, "Come on down and I'll tell you all about it." It's just fantastic when you see the mouth go, "I did not know I made my own. I don't take cannabinoids." No, you create your own endogenous cannabinoids. Wow. And there we go. So there's I'm sorry, I'm raving on again and you're trying to finish.
It's because you've got so much information up there in that head of yours, Deb. We've got to have you come back for another episode.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. It's been a pleasure. I love what you do. So thank you.
No, thank you for coming out. I appreciate it, especially on a holiday. And that's a wrap for this episode. A special thank you to Deb for joining me and for all the hard work she's been doing to make compassionate, evidence-based cannabis care part of everyday healthcare conversations. Her commitment to reach one, teach one really captures what this space should be all about: learning, sharing, and helping the system evolve from the inside out. If you'd like to connect with Deb or learn more about the practitioner support and resources she offers through Bodhi Nurse, you can do so by heading over to bodhinurse.com.au. Lastly, if this show resonated with you, I'd be forever grateful if you could leave a 5-star review or share it with someone who might find it useful. You can also support the show directly at buymeacoffee.com/AusCannaPodcast. Until we meet again, friends, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. And remember, you can't spell healthcare without the THC.